Each Game of the Award winner since 2014 had a statement behind it. In Overwatch, it illustrated that multiplayer games too, for so long, as they had delivered a really good gaming experience, can be Game of the Year. This also preceded with the false narrative that single-player games died, which is ironic because its next winner, Breath of the Wild, had challenged and questioned that definition. It had peaked and reopened the childhood of many, and reminded them what games were supposed to be. In 2020, The Last of Us Part 2 won, whereas to believe that to have a challenging narrative that provoked an LA discourse was worthy of the title of that year, which is still debated to this day. And in Elden Ring, it won because for too long, video games have been patronizing its audience to follow one-dimensional instructions, belittling the intelligence by dense UI, clutter, fetch quests, and hand-holding. Elden Ring gave a breath of fresh air for players to experience, where the intuition and curiosity was rewarded. This year was a little different for video games. It was another of those years where it was filled with announcements and numerous games were delayed towards the end of the year. Layoffs and more controversies within the gaming industry. Initially, I expected there would be more drop this year. Besides Black Myth Wukong or Metaphor Refantasio, rather, we've seen a digital boom of the value of weight indie games have to offer within this space. But besides all that, there was not a genuine foothold that was preferably Game of the Year. But when Astrobot won, this is what struck out to me.
They put the user first always, never thought about any calculation. It was just about the kids, especially, because we had this huge privilege to be potentially the first game to be in the hands of children, and we know what it means very much.
When I was younger, around 6 years old, in our thick computer that looked like this, I was enjoying my half of a fantasy game called Warcraft 3, like my 5th run on Legacy of the Damned. As Arthas, it was novel and surprising. Oh my god. A video game that had a deep and meaningful learning curve, even for a casual audience, and a rich lore to discover, different races to have their own unique characteristics and competitive edges. The game by itself was a meaningful to learn and even replay for thousands and thousands of hours. And as a 6-year-old kid, growing up, those were the best parts of your day. And to grow up having a video game rich as Warcraft 3, Counter-Strike Source and 1.6, Tekken 4, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood and Revelations. Growing up with video games, to have fun with them doesn't just make your life a little less overbearing. You can also tend to appreciate the medium more than just a piece of code the way you want to appreciate it. The idea of the first video game left an impression in my head because everyone can agree that it is the first video game that we played that we tend to fall in love with, and through that love with video games comes the first impression we have for it. And not to mention, wherever we are called back with the nostalgia by other games, it is these games that we are drawn back towards. A playful fantasy where we're able to do and have an amazing space that we choose to have and to be in. And with that being said, what other games can you recommend for people who are too overwhelmed to start gaming because of the massive and plethora of choices and standards that people tend to have? They would say things like, I want a video game that isn't too much, or I want a video game that fully immerses you into the world that it brings yourself into, or I like a game that's chill. One of the games that I had to recommend to new players, despite new releases, and despite the classics alike, right? I've always recommended Uncharted 4. It's one of the best few games I would recommend to a person, no matter who that person was. I want to preface this by saying this isn't a review of Uncharted. Rather, this is a dissection of what makes Uncharted one of the best games to recommend. Why do I think so, and why do I think it was the direction of Naughty Dog to do such. Personally, one of the most important factors it delivers is curiosity. In the initial scenes of the game, this guy, Nate, goes to his prison cell in Panama to get into an even older prison whom was guided to have clues to Henry Avery's prison. After a few little American Ninja Warrior obstacles, we arrive, play a little game of astrology, and then come back with a cross. Lied to Vargas because
I won in.
And then convened with Sam and Rafe. When Nate reveals the crucifix, we're treated to a dialogue amongst the three. Rafe acts as the player's head, who has no idea what Sam and Nate were talking about. It is then revealed that this little crucifix, which was found in the middle of a prison in Panama, more can be found at a cathedral of the same bearing in Scotland. It is these little pieces of information that would tend to pique the interest of the player, and with every little objective the game provides, this tends to leave an essence of ambiguity in the very start of the game. We are caught in a shootout in the shores of looking for Avery's treasure. Why are we in the middle of a shootout? Who are we shooting? Who are we with, right? Naughty Dog does a very good job at laying down the foreground of this video game of pieces of information, and of which become very good at achieving and surpassing different layers of foreshadowing. It uses different little cliches that we would tend to see in blockbuster box office films or any TV show imaginable that allows them to be recognizable when they are up to something. From planning to steal the crucifix, Rafe's death threats, and so on. This is a good thing, because it creates a lighter atmosphere to these games. Well, while the grandeur of being the next Elden Lord and learning the secrets of the lands between through different item descriptions, NPC dialogue, basically a game which takes itself really, really seriously and does not drop the ball is great, but to also have a lighter storytelling is also just as much unique and wonderful, because it breaks down the barrier to entry for it to be understood. Nikki Jakey makes a compelling argument where he stated that 7 out of 10 video games should exist because they become building blocks of a very good games we see win awards, and so on. These become research and development tools in order for the video game to flourish, allowing it to become one of the most near perfect example of the games to be. He also mentioned throughout this video, 10 out of 10 games would tend to have too much on their plate. Sometimes people just want a mediocre video game and not always the 10 out of 10 blockbuster experience. Well, I'd like to add that a storyline performed heavily can relay a heavy burden on the players, especially if they're tired and fatigued to digest a story that takes itself way too seriously. Well, there's nothing wrong with a video game whose story takes itself with serious authenticity. Authentic and serious games, they tend to deliver meaningful experiences in the same regard. But the difference is that when a person is fatigued through other factors, chances are the person may not take it as serious as the developers might want. In essence, a lighter story, whether a blockbuster production or not, for so long as it is sincere and authentic, can make a game more fun. Because while obviously gameplay is king, story sets the tone, the reason thereof, the how of the game itself. It allows us to understand the game further than its skeletal function. The moment when John Marston in the epilogue of Red Dead Redemption 2 finally corners Micah in the mountains, and when the music sets in, you will no doubt feel a sense of justice, as if Micah had it coming. In God of War Ragnarok, when we finally were able to hit Heimdall in the face after taunt, has never felt more satisfying, and I wish he deserved more. Essentially, a story allows a video game to have a unique backbone compared to its competitors. Which reminds me, I think this is where the argument of a first video game for Uncharted can fall off. While the action sequences in the game tend to feel natural, it felt like game sense to hop and hijack one of the Jeep cars to progress further into the level. But I like to think if a person who would be playing it for the first time would play this game, it would break the field of immersion for them. As the stage of the game, you pretty much have to rely on your senses, which may lead to progressive failure and constant trial and error as to what that person could or could not do. It'll ruin the immersion because you will keep dying over time, right? And it disrupts the chain of thought of the player, and it shuts down the thrill of momentum that player can have. I do, however, like to highlight that the game surprisingly has an aim lock mechanic, a mechanic that is kinda akin to using aimbot if you've ever seen videos online. This is beneficial especially for people who have never played an FPS before, much less on a controller. This allows and simplifies the game, where all that's left for you to do is to watch the vistas, explosions, and surprisingly, drama. I want to raise the importance, right? I want to raise the importance and the reason why Uncharted 4 especially is such an amazing game for people trying out the medium for the first time. Is that, while it delivers on a story of Nathan Drake, it also understands that some people have also played the other 3 games before, much so that these people have probably grown up alongside these games, thus inferring a more mature audience. We know this because they've made moments within the video game while lighthearted, sincere in a few scenes, such as like how Nate and Elena from dating on and then on and off and then to viewing each other now as a married couple the introduction of Sam in the 4th game, and the connection between them both, and how they want to finish their mother's work. All of these things, I'm pretty sure to appeal thereof to people whom have grown up at some point and to have truthful moments between the jokes and the gunfights. I think Uncharted can simply be at best one of the best games to play. Is that, to be fair, it doesn't treat itself like a video game, rather a massive cinematic experience that uses already known cinematic sequences we know from the movies today. Even if Astrobot right now can have a worldwide demographic appeal through the way it is able to deliver a game that they think is fun, with different mechanics and different unique interactions and creative leveling, with that way they are able to appeal to more and more people, Uncharted can deliver an experience that might be dated to today's standards, but it offers a roller coaster ride of discovery, riveting gunfights, both mature and light dialogue, fit for a first-timer.
Okay?
Just be careful,
I'm always careful.
says the guy who set off every mummy bomb in